Fantastic. Okay, colleagues, so I'm going to chat a little bit about what is where we are at the moment, and what our goal is for today. And I hope that you can you can see my screen. I'm going to minimize my text chat. And Max, I'm going to ask you to please keep an eye on the text chat for me, and let me know if there are any pressing questions. Colleagues, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit hamstrung today in that I am working on a single screen. And so because I am on a single screen, can I just ask you please to do two things for me in terms of chatting? Can I ask you in the first instance to please feel free to put things into the text chat. Max will alert me to anything there that I need to respond to immediately. Additionally, can I ask you please if there are any very pressing questions to simply unmute at any point and let me know. I'll hear you unmute and I'll invite you to speak. I may not necessarily know who you are initially because I won't be able to see screens, but please feel free to do that as well. So today's session, we're aiming to do two things, colleagues, and I'm going to do these two things in a slightly different order because my devices are playing funny games with me today. I'm going to start with a bit of a brief progress update, and then I'm going to try and go straight into a platform demo. If that gives me any problems at all, I'll jump into the training plan and come back to the platform demo. I'm sorry, the load shedding just seems to have done something funny to my teams. So if there are no objections to that, that will be what we look at today. Okay. So a little bit of a progress update for folks for whom this is new, who haven't been with us before. I'd like you to focus initially on this right-hand side part of the screen. And what I would like us to note is that we are currently in the phase of technical implementation, integrating various tools into the Brightspace platform. We've been through a fairly intensive SILT and ICTS training. We're actually still wrapping that up. So we're doing a little bit of UCT facing training at the same time as we're being trained ourselves, which is always an exciting process. At the same time as this, there's ongoing planning for migration and pilots with the faculties. There are various teaching and learning redesigning elements that are happening in relation to the Brightspace platform itself. And we're in the process of these information sessions. So we are sort of in the flow of this diagram, we are about up to here. Okay, not much further than that. The migration process of the full migration process only begins at the beginning of next year. There is a selection of pilots. I think at the moment we're about up to 32 pilots that will be piloted in the second semester of this year, but the complete migration only starts officially next year. So we've identified some pilots. There are, at the moment, according to this, our last check, there were 30, but I know 2 more signed up this morning. The proposal at the moment is that all first-year courses migrate in 2023, and that the timing of other courses will be done in discussion with particular departments and faculties in order to accommodate issues such as what did they sign up for pilots, what's the capacity in faculties, and so on. So broadly, we've had a kind of faculty consultation and orientation process around the digital learning platform, the early access process, the early access people with early access gained that on the 19th of April. The pilots are in the process of being identified and sorted out, and those will go live in semester 2, and then phase 4 starts next year. Before we go any further, because this is new information for some of the people in the room, before we go any further, are there any questions about that? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see if there are any questions. Any hands up? Any questions?
Hi, Shanali. I can't work out how to put my hand up.
Sure, go for it.
Just how firm is this plan that all first year courses will be on Brightspace next year? Because that affects me and my unit quite drastically.
Most faculties have indicated that that is acceptable to them.
Okay.
And that would have been a conversation that would have gone through deans, deputy deans, and HODs.
Cool.
Yeah,
We tend to fall between the cracks.
It's fairly firm.
I think it's still being absolutely finalized. So Renee, I'm sure the discussions will be, I don't think you're being left out of discussions. It's the moment, what is the like seemingly most likely best scenario? It's still kind of being looked at. So I think so far it looks likely, but I wouldn't say, I'd say close to being finalized, but not absolutely.
No worries. No, it's just, I mean, I work in the numeracy center with MAM coded courses for humanities students. So like we generally tend to fall between the cracks. I don't know, anyway, I'll chat to you offline and other stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Renee, and thank you, Janet, for jumping in on that. I'm sorry, folks, I may have a bit of an echo for a second. Okay, that should solve the echo problem. Are there any other? Sorry, that should solve the echo problem. Apologies. Lakshmi had a question. When you mention early access, does it mean we will have a demo site to work on? Lakshmi, that is exactly what it means. So the folks who join us on the 19th of April will only have a demo sandbox site. You will not yet have a migrated course site. Okay, right. Assuming there are no further questions, please feel free, as I said, to interrupt me as I go. Let's swap back to a little bit of something a bit more structured. Sharing my screen again. Okay, so I think let's see if we can jump straight into a little bit of a demo, and then I'm going to come back and talk about training a bit. So this is what your demo page will look like. Please excuse this little blocky here at the moment. There seems to be something funny going on in terms of that link at the moment. This is an important place for me to say this. We are still in the process of working on some of the elements of technical migration. What that means is that over the next month or so, some of the elements of the Brightspace platform will shift or change or look a little bit different. And so when you go to things on a regular basis, you may well notice changes. We apologize for that. Unfortunately, that is just part of that integration does take a substantial amount of time and human hours, and we are giving it all the human hours we can. The challenge is simply that we also want to give staff access as quickly as possible because people do want to see what it looks like. So just be aware that it is a change in process. So what will happen under normal circumstances is you will go to a browser, you will type in uct.brightspace.com. It will add the rest of that login detail to you. If you are in the early access group, you'll get an email reminding you of all of these details. It will bring you to a page that looks something like this, and you will click on UCT login. If you are logged into a browser that has all of your, that is part of the UCT single sign-on process, so that has you logged in as shanali.govender@uct.com, it should automatically take you into Brightspace. And my system is a little bit laggy today. I'm sorry, we had a load shed just before this, and it's lagging a little. So let's give that a second to come on board. As Janet is saying, currently that URL is not available unless you sign up for early access. Okay, and I'm sorry that took so long. That is me, not Brightspace. Welcome to Brightspace. It's going to take a moment to populate, folks. I'm really sorry about that. So let's talk you through some of the elements that you can see on here. The first thing to notice is up at the top, if you can see this little University of Cape Town logo. And so this looks different from when I logged in yesterday already. So when you can see the little University of Cape Town logo up here, then you know that you are in the landing page for Brightspace. This is the Brightspace landing page as a whole. There was a picture here yesterday. It's not here now. That's okay. It'll come back, or a different one will arrive. I have access at the moment to a number of different courses. You will have access to a number of different courses. When you go into Brightspace as part of the early access process, you will probably only see this element, because it's a demo course, and you will probably only see a course, EDN 4501, because that's a demo course, and you are likely to see a staff orientation module. Nicola's asking, will the name Brightspace be changed, or is this a committed name? For now, Nicola, we're talking about it as Brightspace, because Brightspace is the digital platform underlying whatever the final version of our tool is called. There is a strong recommendation from various groups to localize the name and give it a UCT feel and flavor. And so it's currently sitting on the desks of various members of senior management who are giving thought to that process. And we will get some indication of whether we will retain the name Brightspace or whether we will go with something new shortly. Okay, so you'll have, oh, fantastic. Okay, that's exciting. Nicholas is able to get in at the moment. So you'll see my courses, and these will be all of the courses. And if you click through there, different courses will be categorized differently. So these are courses that are available at the moment, it seems, to most people. And if you click on sandboxes, I should just have one there. I have two because somebody's invited me to an additional one here. And that was one that I started messing around with myself. Okay. Things that are interesting up here, this little discover button allows students to find courses that are discoverable, or modules that are discoverable. We're not going to do that now. Okay, so some of the early access people already have access. This is what I mean about things change quickly. The quick eval button, which I just clicked on now, is, I think, one of the most useful things. It's going to help me organize my life substantially. It's one of the most useful features of Brightspace in many ways. For staff, if you have any marking to do, any evaluation to do, Brightspace comes to us from the other side of the pond, where they use evaluation and assessment interchangeably. If you have any assessment to do, things that your students have submitted, it will be listed for you here under this quick eval item. So instead of having to go into courses, you could literally just start from the latest, the oldest item on the list, and just access it from there. Okay, so that is a little bit of what Brightspace generally looks like. Let me head back to the Brightspace main space and show you courses again. We'll be able to change it. No, Chris, we've asked about that. The recommendation is because of the resourcing and the changes downstream that we should be careful about renaming things where possible. That said, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do towards the latter part of today's session is to just add to, in fact, let me share that link with you now. I'm going to share a link into the text chat, folks. if there's anything that you think is a burning issue at any point in today's presentation that you really, really, really would like us to take on board, please can I ask you to pop that into the Jamboard link that will eventually return to me. I'll pop it into the text chat as soon as I can. That's lovely. I'll come back to that in a moment. So let's show you something of what a course site looks like. And some of you will have seen this before. Is there a Dropbox tool in Brightspace? Renee, there are tools that are similar. They're not named exactly the same. That's something we can talk about in a moment. So at the moment, we are in a new course space. And the way that we know this is that, number one, this nav bar at the top has changed. So initially, you would have noticed there were just three things. There was resources, there was quick eval, and there was a third thing. And I don't remember what at this point, but there were just three items. And at this point, you'll see you've got a full course nav bar at the top. Also, your course Discover, thank you, Chris. Discover, there was resources, Discover, and now I've forgotten the third one, so let me not go there. So you've got your Brightspace learner simulation, which is a course. I would suggest that everybody changes this banner because it will help your students to just identify when they're changing course to course. They have a little item that tells them what work they need to do. They have a little quick guide, and this quick guide will probably have some information underneath it. We did have some information there the other day, but it's currently changing on us. There's quite a lot that's changed on today's course. There's an announcements widget over here, and this is where the most recent announcements that you make to your course will be added. And then underneath that, there's a course calendar, and then a sort of an indication of you. Chris, this is currently in lecturer view because I can, for example, see things like content and edit it there. There is an option to put it into student view. I would prefer not to do that immediately because they did suggest to us that while we were moving things around, student view would be a little bit messier. But there is a student view, very similar to the student view option in Vula. So it gives you an element of it, but not all of it. Clear, is it customizable if you don't want a calendar visible? Some elements of this are customizable via templates, some are not. So some of these things will automatically appear on this, or you may be able to select a particular template for your site that does or doesn't have a calendar, for example. Okay, so let's just take you through a quick whip through some of these elements. So we're on the course homepage at the moment. Content is where you build your course. Assignments would be where your assignments tool lives. Discussions, where the discussion tool lives. Quizzes, where your test and quizzes tool live. Class list, very much like a class list in Vula. Grades is the gradebook tool. Class progress is something that is useful for both staff and students and is a new tool to us in that it allows students to see how they're progressing individually and allows staff to see how they're progressing, how the class is progressing. And then over here, so these are kind of the most commonly used tools. Some of these, this may yet change. Kishore, yes, we're only officially sending information about that on the 19th. And then over here under the course tools, there's a list of additional other tools that people might want. And under the more element, there's virtual classroom and video assignment, which we're not going to get into detail on today. Okay, so let's have a little look at content. Under the content tool is where you have an opportunity to build things. Okay, and at the moment, I am in this particular course right now as a student for this course. So there are elements here, and I've completed most of these things. So there are various elements here that I might undertake. So I might go and look at the welcome for the course. And if I clicked on that, I've done this once. So it's taking me here first to allow me to skip past things. But if it was the first time your student was doing it, not all of that would be immediately visible to them. Let's see, are there questions? So will we be able to have Zoom set up through Brightspace for a course like we did on Vula? Yes, Lakshmi, it's one of the integrations that need to be, that's on our list of integrations to work on. I think that they are prefacing the integration with MS Teams. I think that's being done first, but Zoom is shortly after that on the list. So this is what a sort of an embedded instruction to students might look like on Brightspace. What is quite interesting about Brightspace is once your students are into like a module or into a unit, there are these two arrows at the top, and it kind of keeps them on the pathway of that unit. So this particular unit has only two elements to it. So when I click on next activity, you'll see it'll tell me that I've done with those things. And that's quite helpful in terms of helping students to know where they are and to keep them focused. So the next unit, for example, if I start off my next unit, it has a few more options in it, and you'll be able to think that you can, for example, embed specific text in here if you want your students to look at it on the website rather than downloading a PDF or some other form of document. In this instance, what we have loading up slightly slowly is an embedded PowerPoint, which is converted to a PDF, which is very, very useful for students in terms of data. And I'm sorry, as I said, for some reason, my system is a little bit slow today. But that is just an embedded PowerPoint, which is rather nice as something that you can do. Because it embeds it as a PDF, though, you will lose sound. So that's not an embedded PowerPoint with sound. If you want to have effectively a screencast recording, i.e. a PowerPoint with sound in the background of it, then what you have to do is upload it as a video, and the OpenCast tool is another integration that we're bringing into Brightspace to enable that. Okay, this is just an example of text embedded on a page, nothing too challenging, but also quite useful in terms of being clear about the kind of visualization of Brightspace. So Brightspace as a tool is very kind of visually clean in many ways. You can embed visuals on these kinds of pages as content, and then it signals to your student that there's something coming up to do. And the thing that they're going to do in this instance is they're going to take a quiz. Is it possible to load PowerPoints with voice rather than convert to a video? Nicola, it is. PowerPoints with voice are incredibly large files, though. They're generally much larger than videos. So what we recommend that you do in order to give students some options is you can upload it as a PowerPoint with voice to the file manager in Brightspace. But we also recommend that you upload it as a video in order to manage data issues for students. Okay, and your student in the kind of process of the content automatically encounters a quiz, which is quite a nice way for them to be able to do it. They don't have to step outside it. So you can say, after the following 3 content items, after the following 3 units, there is a quiz there. Students ask us to load all formats. Yes. Different people do different things with PowerPoints, with MP4s, and with the slides only. Some students, for example, like to sit with a printout of the slides only and make notes based on your MP4, for example. Okay, and this is quite a nice example. This is an example of a discussion in Brightspace. So this is what a discussion, or in Vula used to be called a forum, looks like in the Brightspace space. You'll see that what is nice here is that you can add a graded rubric to your discussion. So if you would like to grade your discussion, then you can indicate to your students that there is a graded rubric available to them. And you can see that there's an opportunity here for your students to start threads or add threads. There is an opportunity for people to reply to things, and you can keep an eye on, for example, the ratings. Brightspace in some ways draws quite a lot on the idea of learning together, communal learning, sort of, I guess, very community oriented learning. And so people can rate posts and so on Brightspace. That is one of the things that we have asked about, whether or not that can be turned on or off, to allow us to give both staff, primarily to allow us to give staff some choices about whether or not they want students to do that. Okay, and I'm just going to flick through to the end of this particular unit because it's quite nice to see what you can do. So in this unit, there is an opportunity for students to complete an assignment. And this is what an assignment will look like to students. You give them an instruction, download this, do this, and then upload it. And they can do all of that in this space. What is interesting is that students can also, as they are uploading their assignment in this space, in this single thread or pathway, they can also do things like record something. So if you wanted to set a kind of very quick assignment where you asked your students to record a very quick message for you about, for example, today's lecture or about the week so far or something like that, you could indeed ask them to do that very easily and still receive it through the assignments tool. Is there a tool to pick up plagiarism in essays? Turnitin stays with us. We're not. Turnitin is a third-party tool, and that has already been integrated into Brightspace. So you can continue as per normal to add Turnitin to your assignments. So let's just show you what the little record function looks like, because I think that's a really, really cool function. If I press record, and it will give you a little picture of me and all the chaos in my world, and you would simply click new recording, and it gives you 30 minutes of recording, and then you add it. And 30 minutes is quite considerable. It gives you that, and it gives students that, and then you add it, and it will add it to that item. It'll take just a few minutes to process that, or a few seconds normally. I think I'm going to pause it because I think I want to move on to give us time to focus on the training issues. And then it tells us, congratulations, you are done for the day. And then I can go, I'm done, and it will take me back to the content selection, the content elements for this course. And this little demo, you will have access to a demo very similar to this in Brightspace, and you can work your way through it. Okay, do I see any further questions? I do not. So let's move on. A quick check though, before I do that, does anyone want to, who is the recording visible to? So Renee, if it's recorded in assignments, it's only visible to people who are in instructor roles on Brightspace. Let me take you to something that I have a bit more authority to fiddle with things in. So the recording is only visible to people in instructor roles or in tutor roles. So for example, you could ask students to record themselves explaining a mathematical solution if you wanted to. Renee, I'm thinking about your context, or explaining what's happening on a graph, and then tutors could, if they wanted to, watch that. If that was part of your design. Claire, can the unit boxes be released weekly? Yes, they can. So units and modules, you do have control of release times. You don't have to release them all at once. You can work on something in the background and have it all set up and then release it at your convenience. Okay. Let me take you into something where I do have instructor rights at the moment. Okay, so this is a course that I'm messing around in, and I'm here as an instructor. And so what I would like to do is I would like to show you here very quickly how you might do some, can they see all the activities in a unit on one page? Yes, they can. You can indeed see it. So on that screen where there were the little blue units, then yes, you can click between, click between activities on that. Okay, so let's say, for example, that I wanted to send an announcement. I think the easiest way to do it is to go to it from the announcements widget. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the Brightspace announcements tool is that you can embed a video or voice note in an announcement. So I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to call it trial. And if I would like to record an announcement in this, I go to this little button here that looks like a little player. So I could add some text if I wanted. And a lot of people do add text. And that's what's been our convention in Vula up until now. But I can also add some kind of alternative, I'm in the wrong place. My apologies, folks. You can add to this from here. You can add a whole range of things. So you can add a link, you can add something from your course files, you can add something directly from your computer, which we don't recommend because then it just goes into a mess in your course files, or you can add a video note, which was what I was hoping to do. And it works very, very similarly to the previous time. So you could click record and you could send a video note to your students at that point. And when you published it, they would receive the text, whatever text you've chosen to insert, and a video note. And so while I wouldn't suggest doing that for every single announcement, because that can become quite demanding for students, I think that it's really useful to do that in instances where perhaps you want to gently encourage your students about something that's going wrong in class. So it has a lot of tools, I think, absolutely, Nicola. Brightspace has a lot of tools that lean in the direction of personalization, that lean in the direction of giving students an opportunity to engage with course material in slightly more pathwayed manners. What's Renee saying? Do students get a notification about the assignment outside of Brightspace, such as email? Yes, go straight to their email. The other thing that Brightspace comes with, which is new for us, I think in general, the Vula mobile app was a third-party app and not a particularly good one. It improved substantially over the last 3 years, but it's never been the greatest representation of Vula's capabilities. Brightspace comes with a very, very good mobile app, which is fantastic for phones and tablets. And that is something that gives students flexibility, both in terms of what device they're using, but also if you want to sit on the couch and listen to something on a tablet as opposed to being at a desktop or in a lab, you have the option to do so. And so that is, again, opportunities for students to make choices and staff to reach out to students in a variety of ways. Okay, so the focus of today's webinar is really not on introducing the tool, although we're demoing it at every session to give people a chance to dip into it a little more. Are there any other pressing or burning questions about Brightspace as a digital platform before we jump into talking about training, which is where I really, really hope that we will be able to get some feedback and some ideas from everyone in the room today? I'm not seeing any unmuting, nor am I seeing, will we get the app?
A quick question, please.
Sure, go for it.
Do we get any log on what activities students have been able to see or to gauge on engagement with our materials that we've posted under Brightspace?
Yes. So one of the things that is, I'm going to swap out, actually, I should have stayed in that tool. Apologies. One of the things that is quite nice about Brightspace is that if you are in instructor role, you can, for different tools, see the analytics for that tool in the particular tool that you're in. So for example, if I go to this course and I go to a module on this, I'm going to flick through here quickly. If I go to a module on this little tool up at the top here gives you course options, gives you this view reports function. At the moment, it's not going to look particularly helpful because there aren't a great many of us on this particular course. But that view reports function gives you a sense of who's been doing things. So we've had one particular person working on this course, and so that gives you a sense of who that is. What you are able to do here is if you click on this user element, then you can see by person what people have been up to. So you'll be able to see their names and what they've been actioning as they go along. And there's a stats element for that as well. And that capacity is available for content, for assignments, for discussions, and for tests and quizzes. I would need to confirm which of the other course tools it was available for. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So my sense at this point, and it is just kind of, like a month in kind of thing, 3 weeks, my sense is that it is an easier analytics tool for most people to look at because it's a click and it produces a report for you. What it doesn't do is it doesn't give you quite the same level of ability to design the particular reports that you want to see. So it has some preset report functions. Chris, I see a hand.
Thanks, Shanali.
Sorry, that took a moment.
What I typed gladly was a question whether we were going to get early access to the app as well. But the question I wanted to ask in terms of what are we going, or what could you show us, is how easy is it going to be to transfer bulk data and things, I'm going to phrase it very generally, from our existing Villa sites? For example, I've been teaching at UCT for 14 years. I have just under 30 course sites, and I reuse a lot of stuff. Is that easy? Is it going to be saved to the PC upload? Is it going to be something that we would ask to be done automatically? What's going to be that process, if I can ask?
Good question. Thanks. And I think that's often a concern for staff because Vula is our other repository for many, many, many things. In the first instance, what we are working on at the moment is we're working on automated migration for sites. My concern / ongoing question around that would be, what would we do with sites that were not current? So if you had a site that was perhaps you ran the course, you run the course every 2 years or every 3 years or something like that, and I think we must flag that as a query or a question. So short answer, Chris, we are working on the smoothest possible migration of sites. We'll go through one iteration of that now or we've gone through multiple iterations of that now in preparation for the pilots. And I imagine that there will be at least a chance to look at that again after the pilots so that we get the best possible automated migration. Some elements will not migrate automatically, and we will provide staff with a list of those, and those will need to be manually migrated. But we're trying as much as possible in the automated migration to minimize the amount of manual work that needs to be done. So short answer, automated with some manual work after, the precise details of which are not clear to me right this minute. Okay, manually migrated by staff member or others. It will I think, depend on whether people are in pilot programs or whether they're in batches, and how much capacity there is, both in terms of staffing and in terms of SILT itself. Does Brightspace have a course evaluation tool? At the moment, Shaman, there are course evaluation tool functions, but there is a course evaluation tool project that's looking at the best option for course evaluations. So that functionality will be retained. Whether it will be retained directly within Brightspace or as an integration remains to be seen. And yes, resources and lecture videos are very high on that list because they take forever to move. Leanne, I see a hand. Apologies.
Hi, Shanali. How easy would it be to change what access, so for example, our tutors have? So one of the problems I currently have with Vula is that so if you want a tutor to be able to do a prac, the same way a student was, you can't actually do that unless you give them sort of alternate access via another email address. Is there an easy way to do that in Brightspace?
There is not an easy way to do that in Brightspace, and that is something that we are currently in conversation with the technical team at Brightspace about, because it's going to cause us some ructions. So we are aware that that is a problem, and the answer, the solution to that is not currently clear. Can I ask you to pop that question into the text chat, please? Because I think that's a really important question to grab for moving forward. Thank you. Okay, folks. So the thing that I was hoping to talk to people about today, and that's going to happen very quickly, is something about training. No, Nicola, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's difficult to move people between being a tutor and a student. So tutors are a particular role, students are a different role, and it's difficult to do that. Claire, we're going to come back to that question a little later. Okay, so our goal for today is really to focus in the last sort of 15 minutes around community training and development. And this is a slightly different step, colleagues. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put on the table our current plan for community training and development. And what we would like is a little bit of feedback on that. You can give this feedback in a number of different ways. Number one, I would encourage you to please feel free to leave us a message in the text chat about this as we go. Number two, I would like you to talk, if at all possible, to your HODs, your teaching and learning people in your departments, anybody who is responsible for liaising with deputy deans or deans about training. So I would encourage you to chat to those people. I'm so sorry, for some reason that link is not working. So we're going to have to stay with text chat and talking to the people in your immediate space who can feed back to us, but also feel free to, at the end of today's session, to unmute and to give us some feedback then as well. Okay, so 3 aims really for us. We would like very much through this program process to be able to enable a range of users to confidently navigate, function in, and shape the UCT instance of Brightspace to support their particular needs, to develop collaborative and supportive networks and relationships in relation to this with departments and faculties, and of course to respond to participant needs. So critically for me in this part of today's workshop, I'm going to ask you to let me know what you think about this problem. Okay, in terms of community training and development, we're recognizing the following people that we need to make sure that we support. So probably in this room, largely today, we're looking at this little orange block. And so that's where we're going to focus much of the remainder of today's session. But we also recognize that there have historically been a lot of roles in relation to VULA that administrative staff play. Of course, our tutors play critical roles. And then finally, we have guest lecturers. And I've popped the students off on the side here for now because that's somewhat of a distributed responsibility, usually between faculties and kind of central organizations like SILT. So we often provide the technical materials and resources, and faculties use those in a variety of ways. But this is where we're really focusing for today. And specifically this key group of course conveners, lecturers, and teaching assistants who I've included there where they specifically have course building functions. So I'm sorry, there's a fair amount of text on the slide, and I'm going to endeavor to slow down and to take it as calmly as possible. In the left-hand column, there are the range of kinds of support and training that we are planning to offer. Up at the top is the elements that have the most freedom for staff and require the least amount of time. And towards the bottom of this list are the elements that require more time and more, and that are kind of structured a bit more. So the first element of our training is to make sure that there are learning resources available, and those include documents like one-page guides for the various tools and recordings. For the pilot process, we are using Brightspace's materials for these, largely because we want to, because Brightspace itself, the UCT instance of Brightspace may change towards the end of the pilot. And what that means is that we don't want to have to do guides twice, particularly not recordings twice. So there will be key guides made for the UCT space. The others will be more generic. The second thing that we have available in terms of folks learning how it works is that there will be a range of demo courses available, including some of the courses that you've seen today, but also some orientation modules specifically for staff. There will be a DIY course migration document or process, and this is primarily intended for people who want to migrate their courses themselves, in the sense that they want to work out of, not in a kind of structured process with other people. They need to work independently. Maybe their timelines are different or something like that. And so there's a document for that. There will be the usual sort of standalone drop-in webinars, which will be largely tool focused around specific clusters. There's the opportunity for consultations where needed, and these consultations will largely be for people who are having very specific challenges. And then the very particular items that I would like to focus on today is this idea of a Brightspace intensive program. That would be 3 hours over 2 days, or 3 hours on 2 days. And by the end of that time, ideally, a person would be confident to run their Brightspace site, and they will have identified some of the elements on their site that have not migrated well, that perhaps need adjustment. And they will know how those adjustments and changes need to be taken forward. The distributed program functions very much like the intensive, but instead of running over a 2-day period, we could spread it out over a slightly longer period, so that people were doing an hour a day, say over, for example, 6 weeks. And then the design studio is slightly different from these other items. All the other items at this point are very focused simply on helping you move or refine your site that has been moved onto Brightspace. So these are really about, can you drive Brightspace? Do you understand the different tools that are options for you? Do you know where things are and how to navigate it, how to add things to it, and so on? The design studio space is focused not just on the transition to Brightspace, but also on redesigning your course and setting up a site in concurrently with that. And so the design studio in Brightspace is ideal for new courses or courses that are recurriculating. For the vast majority of people, I imagine that they're going to be looking at this idea of drop-in webinars, consultations, and then either a departmental or faculty intensive, or a departmental or faculty distributed program, or joining one of the mixed interfaculty groups for that. Pausing for a second, are there any questions about those forms of training? Are there any glaring gaps that we have missed? Some kind of training that you would really like that you don't see represented here? At the moment, this is something of a buffet. And we hope that everyone in the room will see something here that is of use to them, that they think they could use. Okay, fantastic, moving on. So a little bit of a summary of that then. On the left-hand side over here, we've got the various forms of training that are available, and then who is likely to make use of those forms of training. So all of these forms of training are available to course conveners, lecturers, and TAs, with just 2 caveats. One, that this kind of DIY process of training yourself at your own pace is likely to be more useful for courses that are incredibly well established and folks who are very digitally literate and very comfortable with exploring those kinds of things on their own. The other caveat is that the design studio in Brightspace in many ways is ideal for courses that are either new or recurriculating, and probably not the best training choice for somebody who has a course that they are well comfortable with and satisfied with and simply want to transition to Brightspace, in which case I would suggest either the intensive or the distributed. Thank you very much, Chris, for putting that in there. We have a substantially, for our administrative staff, we have a reduced program. They will obviously have access to all of these elements, but there is a reduced tool process that they have access to, largely because the process of creating courses in Brightspace is automated. So historically, administrative staff have created Vula courses for some departments and have populated those courses with various tools and so on. That will now be done centrally. So that is something that those folks will have, won't have to do any longer. And that means that within faculties or departments, or even across the institution, we have a specific program planned, a kind of intensive program for admin staff who are supporting either pilots or migrations. For tutors, at this point, we're looking at training possibilities that largely fall in this band over here. And we suggest that generally tutors are not best suited for consultations unless they're coming with something very specific. So tutors who have additional responsibilities, such as setting up discussions or something like that, who are in an instructor role for a course in terms of course building, they're very welcome to use consultations. For the most part, we strongly recommend with your guest lecturers that you book them in for a consultation before they start teaching so that they can have someone take them through some elements, and that they use the basic orientation elements. I don't see that they will have time for any of the more extensive elements at the bottom of this program. And then for students, as I said at the beginning, there's a kind of distributed support process. And I'm noting Chris's question, and we're going to come back to that at the end in terms of talking about orientation for students and so on. Okay, so the top part of this, of these offerings is largely around self-paced elements. Sorry, Nicholas, the gray was just because that was the suggestion from PowerPoint in terms of what was more visible. The gray does not imply anything at all in this instance. And the bottom set of these elements are around kind of cohort-based or group-based, some kind of live element of training. Okay, so in terms of our administrative staff, our tutors, our guest lecturers, and our students, there are these various options. Colleagues, we've got 3 minutes and then 2 minutes, and then I'll wrap up. And then in terms of our cohort-based training, we have the following options: the intensive, the distributed, and design studio. And then we have a series of key topics that will be covered in various spaces, specifically through the webinars, through the various resources, and through the distributeds and the intensives. And those are about, in the case of the distributed and the intensives, about 6 hours worth of training. I am going to pause there for a second, actually, and just ask if there are any comments. Is there anything that anyone wants to say? We don't have a great deal of time. We got stuck a bit with the demo. Is there anything that anybody wants to say out loud? Okay, folks, with that in mind, I think what's a variety of training options. Okay, thank you. One of the things that we are worried about is trying to give people options, and options in terms of timing as well. When do we think official training will start? Between now and the sort of first week of May, also, we're looking at information sessions. And once people have access on the 19th, there will be 2 days after that, we have a scheduled set of orientation and navigation training. And thereafter, starting from early May onwards, there will be opportunities to sign up for intensives and distributors. And once the pilots are a little bit clear, we hope very much to try to group people who are in the pilots program, so that, for example, faculties and departments can can kind of overlap a little bit in terms of their training and see each other and engage with each other as that process is going on. Thank you also for the question. Any other questions, colleagues, or pressing concerns? We will share these slides with you. I'm going to ask two things. First of all, if when you go back and look at the slides, you have any thoughts or questions or challenges, please can I ask you to simply respond to that email with that question or challenge. That's the first thing. Please talk back to us about this proposed plan. Second of all, please can I ask you to talk in your departments amongst yourselves in terms of pilots and early access people. Talk to your HODs, talk to your reps and so on. It's really, really important to us that if things don't feel right, that you tell us about it. So that we can adjust the plan. While there's a plan out there, the idea is for it to be responsive for you. Will there be further opportunities for staff to join the pilot program in semester 2? Eunice, it's not too late. If you want to pilot in semester 2, we'll reach out to you by email after this. Someone from our team will reach out to you. I'm hoping Janet is still in the room. Thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, if there is nothing further, flag the question about, Claire, I hear you about the project sites. We have a project site, well, we have a short course site stream that is starting up. And I understand that it is an absolutely critical issue and you are on our list of people to talk to about that. Okay. Thanks, Renee. Ta. Okay, colleagues, at that point, I'm going to, I think, suggest that we wrap because it's 2 o'clock and I'm sure people have to run away to other things. You will receive later today, tomorrow, and a recording of today's session. You will also receive slides, and please feel free to have a look through those. And if anything about the training suggestions doesn't sit well with you, please respond and let us know. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Take care, have lovely afternoons. And I wish you a restful long weekend for those who have a long weekend ahead, and a blessed Easter for those who are celebrating Easter. And we